Okay, so today we are going to cover the rules for multiplication. There's also a few properties in this section that you should be aware of. So just like we saw with addition, we also have the identity property of multiplication. So for the identity property of multiplication, that's when you multiply a number by 1 and it keeps the same number. Now it doesn't matter if the number is first or the 1 is first, we're still going to get the same number. So again, for example, I know they showed you one here with 4, but let's say we did 10 times 1, we get 10. Or if you did 1 times 10, you still get 10. So that's your identity property of multiplication, and that's when you multiply any number by 1. Then the next property that we're seeing in this lesson is called the multiplicative property of 0. And what that property states is when you multiply any number times 0, the answer is 0. So keep in mind, if I give you a question and I ask you to multiply 4 times 1,000 times -3, and then at the very end, if there's a 0 in the problem, don't waste your time multiplying those first 3 numbers because you know in the end, the answer is going to be 0. So always take a quick peek at your problem, and if the only operation that's going on in the problem is multiplication, then, and you see a 0 in there as one of the numbers, know that the answer is going to be 0 because we can apply the multiplicative property of 0. Okay, then we also have the multiplicative property of -1, and what that one states is that for every real number, when you multiply it by -1, it gives us the opposite of that number. So, for example, if I multiply 4 by -1, I'm going to get the opposite of 4, which is -4. Now, you can also think of this as +4 times -4. Signs are different, so you know your answer is negative. Now, if you multiply a negative number times a -1, a negative times a negative gives you a positive. But what the property is telling you is when you multiply any number by -1, it makes it its opposite. So it's just the same idea that you know, it's just in different words. So those are the 3 properties for this lesson. So again, the identity property of multiplication, multiplicative property of 0, and multiplicative property of -1. So over here on this lesson, let's go ahead and try some of these. And we're really gonna apply these rules that I've starred here in pink to do these problems. Now, I know in your book, it's got like, they're breaking it apart and multiplying it by -1, but really we're just gonna apply the rules here. So for example, on example 1A, when you multiply +4 times +7, what's a positive times a positive? What sign am I going to get?
Positive.
A positive. And what's 4 times 7?
28.
And that's the answer there. And then here, -4 times +7, a negative times a positive gives me a negative. And again, we're still multiplying the same numbers, so it's -28. Now, they flipped the sign, so now it's +4 times -7, and it's still -28. And then the last example is a negative times a negative, and that gives me a positive. So I know in your book they're breaking it apart and throwing in some negative ones, but all you need to know are the rules down here. So if they have the same sign, their answer is positive, and if they have different signs or opposite signs, then their product is negative. So that's what we just applied. Now, they're also giving you a little bit of rules here about when you've got a whole bunch of positive and negative numbers. What you can do is count the number of negative signs in your problem. and then you can apply that. So here's also the property of opposites in products. Again, they're just showing you that a negative times a positive is a negative, and then a positive and a negative and a negative is a positive. So what this second part, this rule number 2 right here, what it's saying is, let's say I have 1 times negative 2 times negative 1 times 4. So what they're telling you to do is to count how many negative signs you have. How many negative signs do I have in that problem I just wrote? 2. Is 2 an odd or an even number? It's even. Everybody understand odd and even? Even is like 2, 4, 6, 8, and odd is like 1, 3, 5, 7. So if when you count the number of negative signs, if it's an even number, your answer is going to be positive. So if you have an even number of negative signs, your answer will be a positive number. If you have an odd number of negative signs, then the answer will be negative. So in this case, I've got an even number, so I know my answer will be positive. Now I can just go through and multiply my numbers. So 1 times 2 is 2, times 1 is 2, times 4 is 8. So my answer here would be positive 8. Then again, let's say we have negative 1 times negative 2 times negative 1. How many negative signs do you count? 3. Is 3 odd or even? Odd. So that's going to tell me that my answer is going to be negative, and then I'll go through and multiply the numbers. Now, you can also do negative 1 times negative 2, turn it into a positive 2 because a negative times a negative, and then times it by the next negative, and then positive times negative is negative. So, but a shortcut way is just to count your negative signs. If it's even, then you know your answer is going to be positive. If it's odd, then it's negative. And then just multiply the numbers like normal. So let's try a couple of examples. So let's look at example 2. How many negative signs do you see in example 2, part A? How many negative signs are here? 3. Is 3 odd or even? Odd. So my answer will be negative. Okay. Example B. How many negative signs? We see 4, right? Is 4 odd or even? So we know it's positive. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Okay. Example C. How many negative signs? 2, right? So we think, okay, it might be positive, but what's in the problem that's going to change our answer? 0. So that would make our answer 0. So the first thing I'm going to look for is if there's a 0 in my problem, I know I'm not even going to bother counting negative signs or even try to multiply. So my answer would automatically go to 0. All right, let's try example 3A. On that one, what's my sign going to be? Positive. And then what is going to be my product here? What do I get when I multiply negative 3x times negative 4y? Beautiful. So when you multiply numbers that have variables, you're just going to go ahead and put the variables right after the product of the numbers. Let's look at B. Now they're trying to trick you. In this lesson, what were they telling us to do? Multiply. But what's the sign in between those two? Addition. So make sure that you take your time and you watch the sign that's in between. So here they're asking us to add, so this was the other lesson that we already took a test on. So what is 4p plus negative 5p? Okay, negative 1p or just negative p. So what we're going to get into the habit of doing is just writing it like this. But if you include the negative 1, that's fine. I'm not going to mark it wrong. All right, let's try distributing now on example 4. What's going to be the product when I distribute that negative 2? What do you get? So negative 2x, and then I also have to distribute it to the negative 3y. And what will I get there? Plus 6y. Okay, because what we're doing here is negative 2 times negative 3. So that'll give me a positive 6y. Think of that as a negative 3. All right, now on part B, again, be careful. We don't want to try to do anything with that 3p minus 4 first. We're going to distribute. And we're going to treat this as a negative 4 when we distribute it. So I'm going to rewrite the 3p. I'm going to distribute the negative 4 to the p, and then the negative 4 to the negative 2. And now I'm going to group my like terms, and I get negative p plus 8. So after you distribute, if there are any like terms to combine, we will combine them. Everybody good? Okay, let's try a couple oral exercises. So for, let's see, let me just go through and do a few of these. So for number 1, what do we get? What's negative 3 times negative 1? Anna? Positive 3, good. Okay, what about number 2? Negative 3 times negative 9. Negative times negative? Positive, and what do I get, Ethan? 27. Okay, then number 5. Negative 1 times positive 6 times negative 6. What do I get? Positive 36. Good. All right, let me jump around. What about number 9? 0. Good. If you notice right here, you got the 0 in here. Don't even worry about trying to multiply 7 and negative 12. All right, let's jump down to number 13. What is negative 3p times negative 4q? 12pq. Good. All right, notice number 16. Again, they're changing it up. It's subtraction. So what is negative 2ab minus 3ab? Beautiful. All right, let's jump down to number 22. What do you get when you distribute that negative 3 to the x minus y? Beautiful, because negative 3 times that negative y will make it become positive 3y. All right, now on 28, again, do not do the 1 minus 2 first. We're going to distribute the negative 2. So 1 minus 2g minus 2h. And I can't combine anything. So be careful on questions like 28 and 29. On 29, I will also distribute the negative 2 and get 5 minus 2a plus 2b. Everybody good? Nothing to group there. All right, now, for your homework from this section, we're going to be doing 3 through 51 in every third problem. So essentially what we're going to be doing are the multiples of 3. So 3, 6, 9, and notice in my notes here, I've whited out the ones that you didn't need to do. So you're doing 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, and 30. And then it keeps going. 33. Actually, I should have whited out 35. But think of the multiples of 3, or think of your answers to your 3 times tables. So every third problem. Pretty good on understanding what I mean by every third. So just the beginning, I whited out. Okay, we're actually going to, so this concludes the multiplication lesson. And I don't think I whited them out on that page.